If you're so smart, pay your own bills. Those were the last words my daughter-in-law spoke before she learned who really pays the bills in this family. She'd been treating me like a broke old man living off their charity for 18 months, demanding rent, threatening eviction, humiliating me in front of strangers. She had no idea I owned the medical practice that employed her husband, funded his career, and could end it with a single phone call. My name is Dr. Anthony Ross, and I'd spent months watching Jessica assume I was powerless. When she finally crossed the line at a public medical dinner, mocking me in front of 200 of Atlanta's top physicians, I decided it was time to let reality teach her what I couldn't. Some lessons cost more than others, and Jessica was about to get an education in respect that would change our family forever. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is the story of what happened when I stopped being kind and started being clear about who really holds the power. 3 years ago, my wife Margaret passed away after 41 years of marriage. The grief hit me harder than I expected. Margaret had handled our social calendar, our finances, everything that kept me connected to the world outside medicine. Without her, I felt lost. My son Michael suggested I move in with him and his wife Jessica. Just temporarily, Dad, until you figure things out. That temporary arrangement stretched into 18 months. I kept my lifestyle simple. Drove my 2018 Toyota Camry with 127,000 miles on it. Wore the same clothes I'd had for years. Spent my days reading medical journals and taking walks around their neighborhood in Brookhaven. To Jessica, I looked like exactly what I appeared to be. A retired old man with no visible income, living in their basement guest room. She started small, comments about groceries lasting longer before I moved in. Suggestions about contribution to household expenses. By October, those suggestions became demands. Anthony, she said one morning over coffee, sliding a handwritten note across the kitchen table, I've calculated your fair share. $950 monthly should cover utilities, food, and wear and tear. I looked at the itemized list. Internet, $45. Cable, $85. My portion of their mortgage, $400. Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Jess, maybe we should what? Let your father live here free while we struggle with our mortgage? I folded the paper carefully. I understand. But Jessica wasn't finished. I've also been looking into senior living options. Sunrise at Buckhead runs $1,800 monthly. Brookdale's $2,400. Very reasonable for someone on a fixed income. The words stung more than she knew. Fixed income. As if my life's work amounted to nothing more than social security checks. Michael finally spoke. Dad built his practice from nothing, Jess. Show some respect. Built what practice? Where is it now? Where's the money from it? She had a point, from her perspective. When I retired 5 years ago, I'd quietly transferred day-to-day operations to my partners. I drew no salary, took no public credit, made no show of wealth. Margaret and I had lived modestly. We'd traveled, but not extravagantly. We'd helped Michael through medical school, but never discussed the details with Jessica. To her, I was just another elderly parent who'd failed to plan properly for retirement. The fact is, Jessica continued, successful doctors don't end up living in their children's basements. If you were as accomplished as Michael claims, you'd have your own place. I watched my son's face redden. He was caught between defending his father and keeping peace with his wife. I made the choice for him. I'll consider your suggestions, Jessica. Later, when she'd left for work, Michael found me in the guest room. Dad, you don't have to pay her anything. This is ridiculous. Your marriage is more important than my comfort, son. But she's being practical. From her viewpoint, I'm a burden who contributes nothing to this household. Michael sat on the edge of the bed. You paid for my medical school. Every penny. $430,000 in loans gone. You got me into Emory's cardiology program. Half my patients come from referrals through your old network. She doesn't know those details. Maybe she should. I shook my head. Respect can't be purchased with old achievements, Michael. It has to be earned daily. But even as I said those words, I wondered if I'd been too passive, too willing to fade into the background. Margaret used to handle our social obligations. She'd maintain my connections, organize dinner parties, kept my reputation visible in Atlanta's medical community. Without her, I'd become invisible. And invisible men, I was learning, get treated like they don't matter. The 30-day notice arrived on a Tuesday. Jessica had printed it on official letterhead from her marketing firm. Notice to quit premises, it read. Tenant must vacate property by March 15th, 2024, or face legal eviction proceedings. She'd called me a tenant in my own son's house. Michael found me reading it at the kitchen table that evening. She can't be serious, he said, scanning the document. She's very serious, and legally, she's within her rights. Jessica walked in carrying grocery bags. Oh, good, you found it. I wanted to give you plenty of time to make arrangements. This is my father we're talking about, Michael said quietly. This is our marriage we're talking about. Jessica set the bags down hard. I've spent 2 years tiptoeing around his feelings while he contributes nothing. I'm done. He raised me. He paid for my education. He what? Where's the evidence of any of that? I see an old man who watches TV all day and eats our food. I folded the notice carefully. What prompted this timeline? Jessica turned to me with the expression she might use for a slow child. I'm pregnant, Anthony. Due in October. We need privacy. We need space. We need to start our real life together. The news hit Michael like a physical blow. Pregnant? When were you planning to? I'm telling you now. I'm 10 weeks along. Michael sank into a chair. The timing explained everything. Jessica wasn't just clearing the house of unwanted guests. She was nesting, preparing for the family she actually wanted. Congratulations, I said, meaning it. A grandchild is wonderful news. Thank you. Jessica's tone softened slightly. Which is why I'm sure you understand our need for independence. I understood perfectly. In her mind, I was the last remnant of Michael's bachelor life, the awkward relative who reminded her husband of obligations that predated their marriage. I've researched several options, she continued, pulling out a folder. Sunrise at Buckhead has a lovely one-bedroom, $1,800 monthly plus fees, activities, meals, transportation. Perfect for someone your age. She slid the brochures across the table. Smiling seniors playing chess, a dining room that looked like a hotel restaurant. Independence and dignity, the headlines promised. The waiting list is only 6 months, she added helpfully. 6 months? Well, the good places fill up quickly, but there are immediate options. Brookdale on Peachtree charges $2,400, but they have openings now. I did the math. Even with Social Security and my modest retirement account, I was looking at burning through my savings within 2 years. More importantly, I was looking at losing my only connection to family. Michael was my only child. This grandchild would be my only grandchild. Once I moved to senior housing, visits would become formal occasions. Scheduled, polite, distant. Jessica would get exactly what she wanted. A nuclear family unencumbered by previous generations. There are other considerations, I said carefully. Such as? Michael's career, for one. Jessica laughed. What does your living situation have to do with Michael's career? I looked at my son. We'd never discussed the delicate ecosystem that supported his professional life, how my old partnership still influenced his opportunities, how my reputation still opened doors. Dad, Michael said quietly, maybe it's time to... Time to what? Jessica's voice had an edge now. Time to stop pretending you're more important than you actually are? The words hung in the air like a challenge. I could have told her then. Could have explained that Michael's position at Emory existed because Dr. Patricia Hendricks and I had trained together 40 years ago. Could have mentioned that his patient referrals came through relationships I'd spent decades building. Could have shown her the quarterly profit reports from Ross Medical Group, where my name still appeared as founding partner. Instead, I said, time to respect your wishes, Jessica. You've made your position clear. Good. I'm glad we understand each other. But as I watched her organize those senior living brochures with satisfied efficiency, I wondered if she truly understood what she was doing. Because respect isn't just about personal relationships. In medicine, reputation matters. Connections matter. History matters. Jessica was treating me like a powerless old man whose opinions carried no weight. She was about to learn that powerless old men don't usually have their names on medical center buildings. But that lesson would come later. For now, I simply nodded and said, "I'll start making arrangements." The look of triumph on Jessica's face told me everything I needed to know about what she thought those arrangements would be. The breaking point came on January 12th, during what Jessica called a family productivity meeting. She'd arranged papers across the dining room table like a corporate presentation, budget spreadsheets, timeline charts, a printed agenda with bullet points. "I want to discuss Anthony's integration into our household workflow," she began. Michael looked uncomfortable. Integration? Contribution? Participation? Taking ownership of his situation? I sat quietly, watching her organize documents with the precision of someone accustomed to controlling meetings. "First item," Jessica continued, "daily schedule optimization. Anthony, you spend considerable time reading in the living room during peak family hours, 5 to 8 p.m. specifically." "Those are Michael's only free hours," I said. "Exactly, which is why I'm proposing you relocate your reading to your bedroom during those times." Michael shifted. "Jess, Dad can read wherever he wants." "Can he? Because last Tuesday I wanted to discuss my promotion with you, but felt awkward having personal conversations with your father present. He's not a stranger, he's family." Jessica smiled with the patience of someone explaining obvious facts to a difficult child. "He's a house guest who's overstayed his welcome." I'd been watching this dynamic for months. Jessica would present reasonable-sounding requests that slowly isolated me from normal family interaction. "Second item," she continued, "household maintenance duties. Michael and I both work full-time. You're retired. It seems logical that you'd handle basic chores." "What kind of chores?" I asked. "Grocery shopping, laundry, light cleaning, things that utilize your available time productively." Michael finally spoke up. "Dad's not our housekeeper, and Dad's not paying rent either." The room went quiet. Jessica pulled out a highlighted document. "I've calculated fair market value for Anthony's room and board. Based on comparable rentals in our area, $1,200 monthly would be appropriate." $1,200? Michael stared at the paper. "You said $950 last month." "That was before I factored in utilities, lawn care, and depreciation from additional occupancy." I looked at her calculations. She'd itemized everything down to toilet paper usage. "This is my father," Michael said quietly. "This is our household," Jessica replied, "and households require financial balance." She turned to me with the expression she might use for a job interview. "Anthony, I need you to be honest about your financial capabilities. Can you afford $1,200 monthly, or should we discuss assisted living options?" The way she said financial capabilities made it sound like a performance review, like I was an employee who might not make the cut. "I have resources," I said. "What resources, specifically?" Michael looked mortified. "Jess, that's not appropriate." "It's completely appropriate. I'm not running a charity." Jessica pulled out another document. "I've also researched your professional background. According to the Georgia Medical Board website, you retired in 2019. No current practice, no listed hospital affiliations." She'd done homework, thorough homework. "Your LinkedIn profile shows no activity since 2018. Your medical license is inactive. Frankly, I can't find evidence of the successful practice Michael keeps mentioning." The accusation hung between us like a blade. "Jessica," Michael warned. "What? I'm supposed to take claims on faith? Successful doctors don't end up homeless in their children's basements." "I'm not homeless? Aren't you? You have no property, no visible income, no professional standing." "Well, what would you call it?" I felt something shift inside me, not anger, something colder. "I'd call it temporary housing while I determine my next steps." Jessica laughed. "Next steps? You're 68 years old. What steps exactly?" "That depends on my family's support." "Support goes both ways, Anthony. What are you supporting in return?" Michael stood abruptly. "This is enough." "No, it's not enough. I'm pregnant. I'm working full-time. I'm managing this entire household while your father contributes nothing except nostalgia and medical journals." She turned back to me. "If you're so smart, Anthony, if you built this amazing practice Michael talks about, then prove it. Pay your own bills like a real man." The words hit exactly as she'd intended. Not just a financial challenge, a challenge to my masculinity, my relevance, my worth as a human being. Pay my own bills, I repeated quietly. That's what functioning adults do. They don't mooch off their children indefinitely. Michael's face had gone red. He's not mooching, he's what? Contributing what exactly? I stood slowly. You want me to pay my own bills. I want you to act like a responsible adult instead of a dependent child. And if I can't meet your financial requirements? Jessica smiled with satisfied certainty. Then you'll need to make other arrangements. She began stacking her papers with the efficiency of someone who'd just won a negotiation. I'm glad we had this conversation, she said. Clear expectations help everyone make better decisions. I walked toward the stairs, then turned back. Jessica. Yes? You might want to reconsider your research methods. What do you mean? Medical board websites only show active licenses. They don't show emeritus status. They don't show hospital board appointments. They don't show things that matter. She frowned. Such as? I smiled for the first time in weeks. Such as who actually owns the practices your husband works for. I left her sitting at the table, staring at her carefully organized documents that had somehow missed the most important details. Behind me, I heard Michael say quietly, Jess, you have no idea what you just did. But I was already climbing the stairs, thinking about phone calls I needed to make. Because if Jessica wanted to see bills, I was happy to show her exactly how expensive some bills could be. The first hint came 3 days later. I was walking to CVS for my blood pressure medication when Sarah, the head pharmacist, called out from behind the counter. Dr. Ross, how wonderful to see you! Jessica, who'd been trailing me through the store, stopped mid-stride. Dr. Ross? The young pharmacy tech repeated. Are you the Dr. Ross who founded the cardiac unit at Northside? That was a long time ago, I said mildly. Sarah beamed. My father was your patient in 2015. You performed his triple bypass. He still talks about how you saved his life. I accepted the medication bag gracefully. Give him my regards. Outside, Jessica was unusually quiet. They seem to know you, she said carefully. Small medical community. But I could see her wheels turning. Dr. Ross, cardiac unit, founded. That evening, the phone rang during dinner. Anthony? The caller's voice carried through our quiet kitchen. This is Patricia Hendricks. I hope I'm not interrupting. I stepped into the hallway. Not at all, Patricia. What can I do for you? The hospital board is meeting next Thursday about the new cardiovascular wing. We'd value your input on the equipment specifications. Of course. Send me the proposals. Will do. Oh, and Anthony? The Atlanta Medical Association dinner is February 3rd. I do hope you'll attend. We're honoring some of the old guard this year. I glanced toward the kitchen where Jessica was straining to hear. I'll check my calendar. After hanging up, I found her washing dishes with unusual intensity. Hospital board? She asked casually. Advisory capacity. An Atlanta Medical Association? Annual dinner, nothing special. But Jessica's expression suggested she was filing away each detail. The next morning, mail arrived addressed to Dr. Anthony Ross, MD, fax. Official letterhead from Emory University Hospital, a package from the American College of Cardiology. Jessica happened to be walking past when I collected it from the front step. You get a lot of medical mail for someone who's retired, she observed. Professional journals, continuing education, old habits. I tucked the envelopes under my arm and headed upstairs, but not before noting how carefully she examined the return addresses. That afternoon, Michael found me in the guest room reading through committee reports. Patricia called me today, he said quietly. She mentioned you're consulting on the new cardiac wing. Minor involvement. Dad, she said you're chairing the equipment selection committee. That's not minor. I set down the papers. Your wife has questions about my background. She's been asking me about your practice, specific details, financial details. What have you told her? Michael sat on the edge of the bed. Nothing, 'cause honestly, I never knew the full scope myself. You always kept business separate from family. It was true. Margaret and I had deliberately shielded Michael from the complexities of my professional life. We'd wanted him to succeed on his own merits, not ride his father's reputation. Maybe that was a mistake, I admitted. Jessica thinks you're exaggerating your accomplishments. What do you think? Michael was quiet for a long moment. I think Patricia Hendricks doesn't call retired doctors for advice unless they still matter. I think the pharmacy staff doesn't remember patients' doctors unless they were special. I think you're still connected to things you haven't told us about. He was right, of course. Ross Medical Group continued operations under my founding partnership agreement. I drew no active salary, but maintained equity positions. The quarterly reports still crossed my desk for review. My hospital board appointments remained active, though advisory. My professional relationships remained intact, though informal. I'd spent 5 years stepping back from daily operations, not cutting ties entirely. Why didn't you ever explain this to Jessica? Because explanations shouldn't be necessary. Respect isn't earned through resume recitation. Michael nodded slowly. But maybe some people need evidence before they offer respect. I thought about Jessica's research, her careful documentation, her need for concrete proof before accepting any claim. Perhaps she wasn't entirely wrong to demand verification. The question was whether I was prepared to provide it. The Atlanta Medical Association dinner was held at the Georgian Terrace Hotel on February 3rd. I'd mentioned the event to Michael, who'd expressed interest in attending. Jessica, surprisingly, had been enthusiastic. It sounds like a wonderful networking opportunity, she'd said. I'd love to meet some of your medical colleagues. I should have recognized the trap. The Georgian Terrace's ballroom was filled with Atlanta's medical establishment. 200 physicians, their spouses, hospital administrators, and pharmaceutical representatives. The annual gathering where careers were celebrated and connections reinforced. I wore my navy suit with the silver tie Margaret had bought me for our 40th anniversary. Jessica had dressed carefully too, a black cocktail dress that suggested sophisticated professional spouse. Wow, Michael whispered as we entered the ballroom. This is impressive. It was. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with white linens, a string quartet playing near the windows overlooking Peachtree Street. Dr. Ross, a voice called from across the room. Dr. James Morrison, chief of cardiology at Emory, approached with a warm smile. Anthony, so good to see you. How are you enjoying retirement? Quietly, I replied. He chuckled. That'll last about a year. Then you'll be back consulting like the rest of us. Jessica extended her hand. I'm Jessica Ross, Anthony's daughter-in-law. Pleasure to meet you. Your father-in-law is legendary around here. Oh, really? In what way? Dr. Morrison looked surprised by the question. Well, Ross Medical Group is one of the most successful practices in Georgia. Anthony built something remarkable. I watched Jessica's face carefully. She was filing away information, building a case. We found our assigned table near the front of the room. Place cards read Dr. and Mrs. Anthony Ross and Dr. Michael Ross and guest. Front row seats, Michael noted. Someone thinks you're important, Dad. Jessica surveyed the room like a social analyst. It's interesting how people react to your name, she told me, almost like you're famous. Medical community memories run long. Dr. Patricia Hendricks approached our table carrying a wine glass and wearing an elegant silver gown. Anthony, I'm so glad you came. She kissed my cheek warmly. You look wonderful. Patricia, I'd like you to meet my daughter-in-law, Jessica. Patricia shook Jessica's hand with genuine warmth. How lovely to finally meet you. Anthony speaks of his family often during board meetings. Board meetings? Jessica's eyebrows rose. Hospital Advisory Board. Anthony chairs our equipment selection committee, saves us millions with his vendor relationships. I could see Jessica processing this information. Chairs, committee, millions. That sounds quite involved for someone who's retired, Jessica said carefully. Patricia laughed. Retired? Anthony's busier than most active physicians. Between the medical group oversight and hospital consulting, I don't know how he finds time for relaxation. Medical group oversight? Well, someone has to review Ross Medical Group's quarterly performance. $12 million in annual revenue requires attention to detail. Jessica's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. $12 million? This year's looking even better. The new pediatric cardiology program is exceeding projections. Patricia excused herself to greet other guests, leaving our table in awkward silence. Dad, Michael said quietly. Is that accurate? 12 million? Before I could answer, the dinner program began. The evening proceeded through the standard agenda. Welcome remarks, recognition of new fellows, memorial tributes for deceased members. Then came the special presentations. This year, announced the association president, we're honoring physicians who've shaped Atlanta's medical landscape over the past 3 decades. Jessica leaned forward with sudden attention. Our Lifetime Achievement Award recognizes a physician whose contributions extend far beyond individual practice. Someone who built institutions, trained generations of doctors, and established standards of excellence that continue today. I felt a familiar discomfort. Public recognition had never been my preference. Dr. Anthony Ross founded what became the largest cardiovascular practice in Georgia. He established the cardiac surgery program at Northside Hospital. He's trained over 200 residents who now practice throughout the Southeast. The spotlight found our table. Jessica's face was visible in the ambient light, her expression shifting through confusion, realization, and something approaching horror. More importantly, Dr. Ross has demonstrated that true success means creating opportunities for others. The Ross Foundation has provided over $3 million in medical school scholarships for underserved students. $3 million. Jessica's hands were gripping the table edge now. Dr. Anthony Ross, would you please join us on stage? The applause was sustained and respectful. I stood slowly, accepting handshakes and congratulations from nearby tables as I made my way forward. At the podium, I looked out over the assembled crowd. Colleagues, competitors, friends built over 4 decades of shared purpose. Thank you for this recognition, I began, but individual achievement in medicine is a myth. Everything we accomplish depends on institutional support, colleague collaboration, and family patience. I looked towards our table. Michael was beaming with pride. Jessica looked like she was witnessing a car accident. The physicians in this room understand that true success isn't measured by individual accolades. It's measured by the systems we build, the standards we establish, and the respect we earn through consistent service to our community. More applause. I accepted the Crystal Award, a heavy piece that would look impressive on any shelf, and returned to our table. Jessica was silent through dessert, silent during the networking reception afterward, silent during the drive home. Finally, as we pulled into their driveway, she spoke. You let me think you were poor. I never claimed poverty. You let me charge you rent. You let me threaten you with eviction. You never asked about my financial situation. You assumed. I researched you online. Nothing showed up. Nothing current. I've been transitioning out of public roles. Michael parked and turned to face us both. Maybe we should continue this inside. But Jessica wasn't finished. Her voice was rising with each word. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this evening was for me? Sitting there while your colleagues described your accomplishments I knew nothing about? What's embarrassing about learning new information? What's embarrassing is looking like an idiot in front of 200 doctors who think I should have known my father-in-law is some kind of medical celebrity. We sat in the car, 3 generations of family who'd somehow failed to communicate basic facts about themselves. The eviction notice, Jessica said quietly, the senior living brochures, the rent demands. All based on incomplete information, I agreed. Why didn't you tell me? For the first time that evening, I looked directly at her. Because respect earned through fear isn't respect at all, Jessica. It's compliance. So you were teaching me a lesson? I was hoping you'd choose to learn one yourself. The silence stretched until Michael finally spoke. Maybe we all have some learning to do. But as we walked into the house that night, I could see Jessica was still processing the magnitude of her miscalculation, and I knew the real reckoning was still to come. The phone call came at 7 a.m. the next morning. James Morrison, my attorney for the past 15 years, sounded uncharacteristically formal. Anthony, we need to discuss the medical group situation. Can you be in my office at 10? What situation? I'd prefer to explain in person, but it concerns your family dynamic and some legal implications that have emerged. I dressed carefully that morning, The same navy suit from the night before, but with a different tie. Something about preparing for a meeting with lawyers demanded precision. Jessica was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, still in her robe, staring at her laptop screen. "Good morning," I said mildly. She looked up with the expression of someone who'd spent the night Googling. "I found articles about you, from the Atlanta Business Chronicle, from Modern Healthcare, from the Georgia Medical News." Research takes time. Ross Medical Group, founded 1987, current annual revenue $12.6 million, 4 clinic locations, 43 employees, board chairman Dr. Anthony Ross. She'd been thorough. Board chairman emeritus, I corrected. I stepped back from daily operations 5 years ago. But you still own controlling interest. I own founding partner shares, yes. Jessica closed the laptop slowly. 68% ownership, according to the Secretary of State filing I found at 2 a.m. I poured coffee from the pot she'd made. "You've been busy." "I've been trying to understand how I could have been so completely wrong about your situation." Michael appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work. "Dad, are you heading out?" "Legal meeting. James Morrison wants to discuss some group business." "James Morrison," Jessica repeated. "The healthcare attorney. The one who represents half the medical practices in Atlanta." "Among others, yes." She stood abruptly. "I need to get ready for work." But as she passed my chair, she stopped. "Anthony, about last night." "No apology necessary, Jessica. You acted on the information you had. But I should have asked better questions. Perhaps we all should have." After she left, Michael sat across from me at the breakfast table. "Dad, what's really going on?" I considered how much to explain. Jessica's research activities have created some complications. "What kind of complications?" "The kind that require legal consultation." Michael looked worried. "Are we in trouble?" "Not trouble exactly. But when someone starts publicly questioning a founding partner's competency, it raises concerns about corporate governance." "Publicly?" I showed him Jessica's Facebook post from the night before. "Learned tonight that my unemployed father-in-law actually owns a multi-million-dollar medical empire. Family dynamics are complicated, but wow, reality check complete." Michael read it twice. "She posted about you on social media?" "With photos from last night's dinner, my name, the award ceremony, your place of employment." "Oh no. Medical partnerships are built on reputation and trust, Michael. When a founding partner's family publicly suggests he's financially incompetent or mentally declining, it affects corporate credibility." Michael's face had gone pale. "What does that mean?" "It means James Morrison wants to discuss damage control." Morrison's office occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, with views of the state capitol and CNN Center. He greeted me with the careful formality that accompanies difficult conversations. "Anthony, thank you for coming. We have a delicate situation." And he spread documents across his conference table: corporate bylaws, partnership agreements, hospital privilege documentation. Jessica's social media activity has generated calls from 3 hospital boards, 2 insurance carriers, and the Georgia Medical Board. Saying what? Asking whether Dr. Anthony Ross remains competent to serve in advisory capacities, whether his family circumstances affect his judgment, whether Ross Medical Group maintains proper oversight. I read through the inquiries, formal letterhead, official concerns about corporate governance and fiduciary responsibility. The medical community is small, Anthony. When someone publicly questions a prominent physician's mental capacity, people pay attention. Jessica never questioned my mental capacity. She described you as unemployed, homeless, and financially dependent. Her post was shared 43 times by medical community members. People are drawing conclusions. Morrison pulled out another document. "This is Michael's hospital privilege renewal application, due next month. Section 12 requires disclosure of any family circumstances that might affect professional judgment." I scanned the relevant paragraph. Physicians must report financial dependencies, family conflicts of interest, and domestic situations that could compromise patient care. Michael's privilege renewal could be denied if the hospital believes his living situation creates conflicts or divided loyalties. The implications were clear. Medical careers depend on hospital privileges. Without privileges, Michael couldn't perform surgeries, couldn't admit patients, couldn't function as a cardiologist. What are my options? Morrison leaned back in his chair. Legally, you have several paths forward. You could issue a public statement clarifying your professional status. You could remove Jessica's access to family business information. You could restructure Michael's role in the medical group to eliminate potential conflicts. Or you could file a defamation claim against Jessica for damages to your professional reputation. I stared at the legal documents spread across the table. That seems extreme. Anthony, your reputation took 40 years to build. It can be destroyed in a single social media cycle if this narrative takes hold. He was right. In the medical community, perception often mattered more than reality. Rumors about diminished capacity or family conflicts could end careers. What would you recommend? Morrison gathered the papers into neat stacks. I'd recommend a family meeting, tonight, with all parties present. We need Jessica to understand the consequences of her statements, and we need a unified response to the medical community. And if she refuses to cooperate? Then we'll need to consider more aggressive measures to protect your professional standing and Michael's career. I spent the afternoon walking through Piedmont Park, thinking about families and reputations and the price of public misunderstandings. By evening, I'd made my decision. I called Michael first. Family meeting tonight at 7, kitchen table, ask Jessica to be present. Dad, is everything serious? It's manageable, but it requires immediate attention. At 7 sharp, we gathered around the same table where Jessica had presented her eviction ultimatum 3 weeks earlier. I spread Morrison's documents across the surface. Hospital inquiries, partnership bylaws, medical board correspondence. Jessica, your social media post has created professional complications that affect our entire family. She read through the papers with growing comprehension. These are official complaints? Inquiries. Questions about my competency and Michael's potential conflicts of interest. Michael picked up his hospital privilege renewal form. My career is being reviewed because of family circumstances? Hospital boards take reputations seriously. When a doctor's family publicly suggests he's mentally incompetent, it raises questions about judgment and stability. Jessica's face had gone white. I never said you were incompetent. You described me as unemployed, homeless, and financially dependent. In the medical community, those descriptions suggest either poor judgment or cognitive decline. I was just processing what I'd learned. On a public platform, with photos and names and identifying details, I pulled out the final document Morrison had prepared. This is a retraction statement. It clarifies my professional status, explains the family misunderstanding, and requests privacy during our adjustment period. Jessica read it slowly. You want me to post this? I need you to post this. Tonight, before the medical board meeting tomorrow. And if I refuse, Michael answered for me, then I might lose my hospital privileges, and Dad might file a defamation lawsuit to protect his reputation. The kitchen went quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on Peachtree Road. Jessica looked at me with something approaching respect for the first time since I'd moved in. You're not just a retired doctor, she said quietly. I'm a founding partner in a medical group that employs 43 people. I sit on 3 hospital boards. I review million-dollar equipment purchases and physician credentialing decisions. And you let me threaten you with eviction. I hoped you'd recognize the inconsistency between my apparent helplessness and the evidence around you. Respect shouldn't require resume presentations, Jessica. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at the retraction statement. If I post this, what happens to our family dynamic? That depends on what kind of family dynamic you want. As she picked up a pen and began making notes on the document, I need to edit this slightly. Make it sound like me, not like a lawyer. That's acceptable. And Anthony, I owe you an apology, a real one, not because you're powerful, but because I was wrong. I nodded. Apology accepted. But as she began typing her retraction on her laptop, I could see she finally understood the most important lesson of all. Power that announces itself isn't real power. Real power works quietly, builds systems, and earns respect through through consistent contribution to something larger than itself. Jessica had spent months trying to diminish someone she thought was powerless. She'd just learned the difference between appearing weak and choosing to be gentle. Jessica's retraction post went live at 9:47 p.m. Earlier today, I shared some family news that inadvertently misrepresented my father-in-law's professional standing. Dr. Anthony Ross is not unemployed or financially dependent. He's the founding partner of Ross Medical Group and maintains active roles in Atlanta's medical community. Our family is adjusting to some communication gaps, but his reputation and competence are beyond question. I apologize for any confusion my previous post may have caused. Within an hour, the medical community began responding. Likes, shares, and supportive comments from colleagues who'd known me for decades. Dr. Patricia Hendricks shared it with the note, "Family misunderstandings happen. Dr. Ross remains one of Atlanta's most respected physicians." The damage control was swift and effective, but the real work began the next morning. I called James Morrison at 8 a.m. "The retraction is posted. What's our next step?" "Hospital board meetings today. I'll attend to clarify any remaining concerns. The medical board inquiry should be resolved within 48 hours. And Michael's privileges? Should proceed normally. The family conflict appears resolved." After hanging up, I found Michael in the kitchen reading Jessica's post on his phone. 43 shares and 27 comments so far, he said. The medical community moves fast. Reputation management requires immediate response. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you let it get this far? You could have ended Jessica's behavior months ago just by showing her a bank statement." I considered the question while pouring coffee. "Because real respect can't be demanded, Michael. It has to be earned through behavior, not purchased with financial statements." "But she nearly cost me my career." "She cost herself something more important. She lost credibility in a community where relationships matter." Jessica appeared in the doorway, already dressed for work. "The hospital board cleared Michael's renewal," she said quietly. "Dr. Morrison called me directly to confirm." "Good news." She sat across from me at the table. "Anthony, I need to understand something. Yesterday you had the power to destroy my reputation, my marriage, and Michael's career. Why didn't you use it?" "Because destruction isn't the goal, Jessica. Correction is. But I humiliated you publicly." "You humiliated yourself publicly. I simply provided an opportunity for you to correct the record." She was quiet for a moment. "What happens now?" "Now we establish appropriate boundaries for our family relationship." I pulled out a document I'd prepared the night before. "This is a family agreement. It clarifies expectations, responsibilities, and communication protocols." Jessica read through it carefully. "Monthly family meetings, defined household contribution schedules, mutual respect guidelines, and privacy boundaries," Michael added, reading over her shoulder. "No social media posts about family business without prior approval," Jessica read aloud. "That's reasonable." "The goal isn't control," I explained. "The goal is avoiding future misunderstandings that affect professional reputations." Jessica signed the document without hesitation. "I also want to make a financial adjustment." "Meaning?" "I owe you 18 months of apologies, but money speaks louder. The $9.50 monthly I demanded, I want to contribute that amount to your foundation's scholarship fund." I was surprised by the gesture. "That's not necessary." "It is necessary. For me. I need to contribute something positive to balance what I almost destroyed." Michael looked between us. "Are we going to be okay as a family?" "We're going to be better than okay," Jessica said. "We're going to be a family that communicates honestly instead of making assumptions." I thought about the past 24 hours, how quickly professional relationships could be threatened, how effectively they could be restored, how much depended on clear communication and mutual respect. "There's one more thing," I said. Both of them looked concerned. "Jessica, you're pregnant with my grandchild. I'd like to remain in this house until the baby arrives, if that's acceptable." "Anthony, Not as a dependent guest. As a family member contributing to household operations, I'll handle cooking, shopping, and basic maintenance. You can focus on work and pregnancy preparation." Jessica's eyes filled with tears. "You'd want to stay after everything I put you through?" I'd want to stay because you're learning from everything you've been through. That afternoon, Jessica helped me move my belongings from the basement guest room to the main floor bedroom Margaret and I had originally planned to use during extended visits. "This has better windows," she said, arranging medical journals on the bookshelf, "and easier bathroom access." "Thank you." "Anthony, can I ask why you never fought back when I was being terrible?" I arranged the Crystal Award from the Medical Association dinner on the dresser, because fighting back would have made me terrible too. She understood. Real power doesn't need to announce itself. It just needs to know when to act. Section 9. Consequences unfold. 800 words. The story should have ended with Jessica's retraction and our family agreement. It didn't. 3 days later, Michael came home with news from the hospital. "Dad, you're not going to believe this. Dr. Williams in administration pulled me aside today. Apparently, Jessica's original post sparked a conversation among the hospital board about physician-family support systems." "What kind of conversation?" "They're creating a new initiative. Elder care resources for medical families, counseling for generational conflicts, financial planning education for physician spouses." I looked up from the medical journal I was reading. "They're turning our family dysfunction into a hospital program?" "Patricia Hendricks is calling it the Ross Family Initiative. She says you've inadvertently identified a widespread problem in the medical community." Jessica, who'd been listening from the kitchen, joined us in the living room. "They want to use our story as a case study?" "In a positive way," Michael clarified, "about the importance of family communication and respecting medical career stages." I wasn't sure whether to be flattered or mortified. The next week brought more unexpected developments. An article appeared in the Atlanta Medical News. "When families don't understand medical success, a case study in professional reputation management." The piece, written by James Morrison, used our situation, with names changed, to discuss how family conflicts can affect medical careers. It included recommendations for protecting professional reputations while maintaining family relationships. "We're famous," Jessica said, showing me the article over breakfast. "Or infamous." "Educational," I corrected. "Morrison's using our experience to help other families avoid similar misunderstandings." But the real surprise came when Dr. Patricia Hendricks called with an unusual request. "Anthony, would you be willing to speak at the next Medical Spouses Association meeting about family communication and career transitions?" "I'm not sure I'm qualified to give marriage advice." "You're qualified to discuss what happens when families don't communicate effectively about professional status. Your situation has resonated with a lot of medical spouses." Jessica, who'd been listening to my side of the conversation, grabbed the phone. "Dr. Hendricks, this is Jessica Ross. Would it be appropriate for me to participate in that presentation? I think I have a unique perspective on the spouse side of the communication breakdown." An hour later, Jessica had been invited to co-present at the March Medical Spouses meeting about navigating family dynamics during medical career transitions. "Are you comfortable with public speaking?" I asked after she hung up. "I'm comfortable with public accountability," she replied. "What we went through could help other families avoid the same mistakes." The presentation preparation brought unexpected benefits. Jessica and I spent hours discussing medical career structures, financial planning, and family communication strategies. "I had no idea how complex medical partnerships are," she admitted one evening as we reviewed slides about practice ownership structures. "Most people don't. Medical families often compartmentalize business and personal relationships, which is what created our problem." "Part of it, yes." She was quiet for a moment. "Anthony, can I ask about your decision-making process? When I was being awful, what kept you from just ending it?" I considered the question carefully, because ending it would have taught you nothing. You needed to understand the consequences of your assumptions, not fear my retaliation. But what if I hadn't learned? What if I'd kept escalating? Then the consequences would have escalated too. Medical reputations are powerful tools, Jessica. They should be used carefully. The Medical Spouses presentation took place on March 15th, exactly 1 month after our family crisis. 60 medical spouses attended, representing practices throughout Georgia. Jessica and I shared the story of our communication breakdown, the professional consequences, and our resolution strategies. The most important lesson, Jessica told the audience, is that medical careers don't exist in isolation. They're supported by complex networks of relationships, reputation, and institutional connections. Family members need to understand these systems before making assumptions about status or capability. During the question session, a young doctor's wife asked, "How do you restore respect once it's been damaged?" I answered, "Respect isn't restored. It's rebuilt through consistent behavior over time." Jessica and I had to establish new patterns of communication and mutual recognition. And, Jessica added, I had to accept accountability for my mistakes instead of making excuses for them. After the presentation, several attendees approached us individually. Stories about similar family misunderstandings, questions about preventing professional reputation damage, requests for resources about medical practice economics. Driving home, Jessica was quiet for several miles. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. "I'm thinking about how close I came to destroying something I didn't understand," she said. "Your reputation, Michael's career, our family's stability, all because I made assumptions instead of asking questions. But you corrected course when you had better information, only because the consequences forced me to pay attention." That evening, as we prepared dinner together, a routine we'd established since our family agreement, Jessica said something that surprised me. "Anthony, I'm grateful this happened." Grateful? We could have lived in the same house for years without really knowing each other. This crisis forced us to have conversations we never would have had otherwise. She was right. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come from the most uncomfortable mistakes. Section 10. New Boundaries and Resolution. 400 words. 6 months later, Jessica gave birth to Margaret Elizabeth Ross. I was in the delivery room when my granddaughter arrived, and I watched Jessica become a mother with the same fierce determination she'd once used to challenge my authority. "She's perfect," Jessica whispered, holding the baby for the first time. Michael was crying. I was crying. Even the nursing staff seemed emotional. "Margaret Elizabeth," I said softly. "She has her grandmother's chin." "And her grandfather's stubbornness," Jessica added with a smile. The baby changed everything, as babies do. Our household settled into routines built around feeding schedules, sleep patterns, and pediatric appointments. I found myself drawing on 40 years of medical experience to answer questions about infant development, vaccination schedules, and milestone tracking. "It's convenient having a pediatric consultant in the house," Jessica said one morning, as I explained why the baby's breathing patterns were normal. "It's convenient having family willing to learn from each other," I replied. Our monthly family meetings evolved into weekly check-ins about schedules, responsibilities, and household management. The formal structure Jessica had once resented became a framework she actively maintained. "Communication requires practice," she told her sister during a phone call I overheard. "We learned that lesson the hard way." My role in the house transformed from tolerated guest to essential family member. I handled grocery shopping, meal planning, and basic maintenance, while Jessica and Michael navigated new parent responsibilities. More importantly, I became the link between past and future. Stories about Margaret, the original Margaret. Medical wisdom accumulated over decades. Family history that would otherwise be lost. "Tell me again about the first time you saved someone's life," Jessica said one evening as we rocked baby Margaret to sleep. I'd told the story before, but she wanted to hear it again. For the baby, for the record, for the sense of continuity that connects generations. "It was 1982, I began. Emergency bypass surgery. 70-year-old man who'd collapsed in his front yard. The respect we'd rebuilt was different from the respect I'd expected initially. It wasn't based on fear of my power or awe at my achievements. It was based on daily contributions to our shared life. Jessica had learned that assumptions destroy relationships. I'd learned that withdrawal doesn't solve family problems. Together, we'd learned that true respect grows from understanding, communication, and mutual investment in something larger than individual pride. "What do you want Margaret to learn from our story?" Jessica asked as we watched the baby sleep. That family relationships require the same attention as professional relationships. Clear communication, defined expectations, and genuine respect for each person's contributions. And that people can change, especially that. If you're dealing with family communication challenges, remember that respect isn't automatic. It's earned daily through understanding, patience, and willingness to see beyond surface appearances. What's your experience with family misunderstandings? Let me know in the comments below.